Welcome back to another exciting episode of the show. Ha, I'm so happy to be here. It's a beautiful day and it's weekend as well. This is our first episode for today. Probably might be our only episode for today. And as always, we always have special guests on the show. I take my time, I go out there to sort out for the best guests on the show. We call them the top 0.1% of guests on the show. We have moved from the 1% now on going to the 0.1% top of guests going on the show. And once again, today's guest is Tori Rose. She's a Vermont-based indie author whose love of storytelling began in childhood through magical stories shared by her mother about their Mississippi, Choctaw, and African ancestors. Those stories of nature, folklore, and the hidden language of all living things inspire the imagination that now shines through her writing. Her debut novel, Secret of the Family Tree, Digging Up Old Roots, is a young adult fantasy family saga that blends mystery, magic, ancestry, and self-discovery, set against a richly imagined world rooted in folklore and family history. The novel invites readers to uncover long-buried secrets while exploring the powerful connections between the past and the present. Tori, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tony.
All right, thank you so much for taking out your time to be here today. So, Tori, I want to talk about your book. Yeah, at Secret in Books, we always like to talk about books, different books. So, your book, Secret of the Family Tree, Digging Up Old Roots, what inspired you to write that book?
Oh gosh, it started with my children. When I had my two children, my son and daughter, my mother had passed, and they didn't get to know her, so they started to ask me, "What was she like?" and can you give me, tell me about her? So I'd show them pictures of her, and I'd tell them how she would take me on nature walks. And at the time, my children, they were born in Flagstaff, Arizona. I try to find some woods and recreate the tradition my mother gave to her children, me and my five sisters, where she'd take us on nature walks and tell us about the trees. My mother was fascinated with trees. She was always talking to them. And so I was creating that same path with my own children. I wanted them to not only hear about her, but to feel her through her story. I didn't plan on writing a book, but it was my son who he didn't like me telling stories to him through, regular traditional books you find in stores, which, I had a lot of them in the home. He wanted me to tell him a story. So I started telling him about my mom. So I originally wrote Secret of the Family Tree, Digging Up Old Roots, to honor my mother and to pass on her knowledge.
All right, thank you so much, Tori.
You
So,
will.
can you introduce us to the world of the book and what readers can expect without giving away?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite hear that.
Introduce us to the world of the book and tell us what readers can expect without giving away too much.
Absolutely. Well, the story takes place in a place called Hertfordshire, Vermont, where it opens with a family called the Fairlands and their connection to the earth. I will bring you to the protagonist of the story, which is Samantha. She's returning home with her mother, Anna, to honor and to celebrate the passing of her father. And with her family returning to their ancestral home in Hertfordshire, Vermont, they discover a lot of hidden histories and magics that lives on the Fairland land that has been hidden for a long time. And not only do they discover the magic that her grandfather leaves her a message to search the woods, search the property and the surrounding area to discover what he called the magical, mysterious uh, things that are hidden on Fairland land. And that takes Samantha and her cousin Zen on a wonderful adventure not only for themselves, but reintroducing the elder Fairlands and their family to a world that they had forgotten. And this is where the introduction of the past, where they came from, what why it's buried, and why they wanted it to stay buried. The world is it is a magical, I guess in genre it would be magical realism. It's fantasy, of course, but I bring the reader into the story. It's like everyday world. I don't expect anything, and But in this real world, magical things happen, and that is the power of magical realism. I paint the energy of in the story with everyday things, a regular town, a regular village, people. But as you move through the story, you realize the reader will realize there's something more happening underneath.
All right, sorry. Thank you so much. So, moving on, how did your Mississippi Choctaw and African heritage influence the story and its magical element?
Sure. As I mentioned, my mother used to take us on nature walks, and which I loved. I grew up in Staten Island, New York, and she was born in Mississippi. Both of my parents were, and her ancestors were the Mississippi Choctaw, and of course the Africans that came to America, and that was her background with the other sprinkles of other cultures. And when she used to take us on these walks, I didn't know at the time when I was a child that she was telling me her ancestral story. But she'd wander us through the woods and she'd say, be careful. She says, be very careful where you're walking. Follow the path. Don't step left or step right. Listen for the birds. If they're quiet, she would tell us there's something hidden in the woods and they're listening. And she says, not only is nature listening, the birds, the animal life, she goes, but the trees are listening. She goes, everything will get still. And she says, that is your signal that something else is hidden there, that they are trying to warn you to look out for. She would tell us to, if we ever got lost in the woods, look at the birds. What are they eating? She says, it would be okay for you to eat this vegetation. My mother was a herbologist. I guess that's what they would call her today, but this was something very natural to her. The Choctaws, their culture there were known as, great farmers, not only in Mississippi, but also in the Oklahoma area. And she would point out the trees and she'd lay her hands on them. She'd tell us to touch them, feel their energy. Communicate with them, greet them. She says, never take anything from a tree or any living thing without asking first. And she'd show us how to ask. Ask a tree, can we have this leaf? Is it okay? And she'd say, lay your hand on it and wait for them to give you a signal. She would tell us to wait. She'd make us be still and wait and hear what they were trying to say to us. And, honestly, I didn't know at the time, because I was so young, that I would actually feel and either a leaf would fall, and she'd tell us either a leaf would fall or, you'd get a strong sense, no, move on. And she would tell us how to do that. And it was very important for her to tell us, to share with us these energies. She'd also, in the night sky, she'd take us on night walks and she'd point up at the sky and she would say, and I found that this was very varied African cultures will do this. She says, look up at the sky and she'd point out the stars, a certain cluster of stars that she called the Seven Sisters. And she said, this is where we came from before we came to the mound in Mississippi. Now, these are things that she told us when we were children. And it wasn't until years later I was watching just a television program. This is long after she's gone and I'm grown up. That people started talking about ancient aliens and the mounds across the earth. And this is when I discovered, because she never spoke of it, of the Naniwaha, which is a cave and a mound in Mississippi, where the Choctaw believe that this is their origin story. And I was amazed because she never mentioned that. She talked about the people who lived underneath the earth, and then they came up. And then she said, but before that, the original people came from the sky. Different cultures speak of that, of course. Different African cultures in the Hopi believe. I learned later that the Seven Sisters she talked about were the Pleiades, the cluster of stars in the sky. And I thought, wow, the story she told me when I was a child all those years ago, I'm hearing people speak of it on TV programs. It's whole TV programs, as people will know, ancient aliens and cave paintings and people living in underneath the earth. And this is why I based the story. I said, this story needs to be told because she told me the story on this nature walks. And again, you will find that not only in the Native American, the Choctaw people, her people, and the African cultures, you'll find that across cultures, they have that story of, the stories of people coming up from the inner earth, She talked about the crystal caves that she has visited, being visited by the little people, she called them, of course, as you know, in Irish and European folklore that talk about the leprechaun. She talked about them. She called them the little people. She would take us to powwows in upstate New York, and I noticed that when the indigenous people were dancing, they would look down. And I used to ask her, why are they looking down? And she says, they're dancing with the little people who are dancing next to them. And she would tell us on these nature walks also from her culture that be careful. She says, don't go wandering off. Don't let the little people, take you away. She goes, because they think it's funny. She'd say, they think it's funny that you would follow them. And she says, they'll take you away. They'll either bring you back years later and all your family is gone. So she said, play with them if you want, she says, but don't go off with them. Don't go off wandering into the trees. If you don't mind, Dominic, can I tell you a story that I feel that really hit me when I was younger, that happened to me? And this is after my mother would tell us, and around the same time she would take us on our nature walks. When I was younger, I got lost. I went to school and they had changed the bus system, so I got on the wrong bus. And the bus driver let me off, and he told me, well, you have to get off. I'm all of maybe 8 years old, almost 8 years old. And he told me that this is where you get off. And I didn't know, so I just got off, and I was in a strange neighborhood, and I'm wandering around. I didn't know where to go. And there was a person that came out, and they said, are you lost, little girl? And I said, yes. And they said, well, this is how you get home. I mentioned this story, Dominic, because she used to say that the trees are alive and they're watching you. And she said there are stories and times where children will get lost and people are looking for them. And when they are found, they'll say, how did you survive the night or the day? And they said, well, this woman or this man helped me. It's normally a woman that will come out and help you if you get lost. And they would say, well, where are they? And these people will know where to be found. And that happened to me when I was younger. My dad said, well, where were you? And I said, well, this person helped me get home. And I couldn't show them because the place was gone. The person was gone. So stories like that helped me to navigate this world. So a lot of places and around the world, especially forests, hold the magic, still hold the magic of the stories that my mother has told me, not only from Staten Island, anywhere I live, like now in Vermont, I am finding that you will find these same ancient spirits that are still living in the woods on your path if you are quiet enough to hear them. And this is what she taught me. And this is what I feel it's important to hold on to these ancient tales, because personally, I feel they're true because they've happened to me.
Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you for that story as well. That was interesting to listen to, honestly. So, family secrets play a major role in the novel. Why was that theme important for you to explore?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Family secrets play a major
Mhm.
role in the novel. Why was that theme important for you to explore?
I find not only for me was it important to explore, is because in a lot of cultures I found, and I'm only speaking of mine, like I stated earlier, my mother told me these stories about beings from other places, but she didn't see them as aliens or what people call, like I said, I mentioned the wonderful show Ancient Areas, that explores cultures around the world and rediscovering maybe the history that we know is not as, I don't want to say they're not true, but there's other ways of looking of the origins of the human race. And it's important because I realize that if you look into your own mythology or ancestral folklore, they will tell you where they came from. Your culture will tell you where they came from. So I weave this story, Secret of the Family Tree, which is actually a trilogy. It's going to be 3 books. The second book is coming out this fall. It's called The Many Branches. It speaks of, I feel, the truth of our humans' origins and what happened for them as our ancestors told the story. I found when I visited Australia, the Aboriginals there talk about how something happened. It's that old flood myth that it happened, something happened. It was a flood. Something happened with the earth and they had to go underground. At one point, they're here, and another point, they're there. And that story is told again and again. And the secret I feel is hidden. I'm not sure why. I think maybe it gets lost because originally our stories were oral, and somehow a lot of them did not make them into our history books. They were pushed aside as fairy tales or just myth that is not to be trusted. But now, which I'm so happy to hear, a lot of people are saying, yeah, this is actually what happened. More and more people are seeing it not only as myth or folklore, but truth. I'll only speak for myself and my family, but truth in our line, in our culture. That it's important to know your roots because then you know yourself. And I discovered that long after my mother had died, these stories were important to her, and she was telling a truth. This is how her people, how humanity, I feel, came to be. And the story runs through it. And it's a secret she felt. And in the story, you'll find because she felt agents or entities or people who don't feel they want all of humanity to know, or they've forgotten, simply forgotten. And if it's known, then it really does take the power out of the hands of the people because we all have that. It's not only with the Choctaw, the African culture, it is within all humans. We all have our own magic and how we can create it. And for me, if you work with nature, they will realign you with your own inner power. And it's a secret because if you know your own power, then other people cannot control you, which I feel is what the world has done to people, made them small. But if you know you have the energy and the power within yourself, then you can control your own destiny. And in my story, that is what is spoken of, that they had to hold it secret because if they didn't hold it secret, something terrible may happen to them. And they did not want that to happen to their family.
All right. So, moving on, nature seems to play an important role in your storytelling. How does it shape the world of your novel?
It shapes it because in my story, nature is a character. Nature's a character, I feel, in our own world. As you know, or most people will know, without the trees and the bees and different forms of nature, we wouldn't be able to breathe down here on this planet. My belief is nature, the elementals, they are the original inhabitants of this earth, and we are the visitors. And it shapes not only in my story, but I feel in everyday life. If you don't have the waters, if you don't have the trees, if you don't have the pollinators, we wouldn't exist as humans. All our food supply would go. And I thread that. I thread that theme through my story seamlessly. I try to make it seamless where it's natural. And people know that. Farmers will know that. People who actually grow and farm and know food, that nature is important. Our ancestors knew that. That if we didn't have these living beings, and they are living sentient beings beside us, we would not exist. And I weave it in the story as my mother taught me. They are our friends, our neighbors, our coexisters on this planet, these natural giants. And a story I just read the other day that Canada has named trees living beings that are not meant to be harmed because they are alive. And I've known that since a child. That is just the way I moved. So I wanted that to be expressed through my story, how it's important. In the story, I emphasize that trees, specifically these wonderful, glorious giants around the world and this planet, they hold our history for us. And if we care to listen, they will tell us the story of the human race and how they came to live side by side with them on this planet. And that is the magic and the mystery that the Phalans rediscover.
Okay, thank you so much, Tori. So, my next question for you is this. So if there's one thing you wish readers would take away from your book, what would you want that to be? Something that you don't want them to miss, like a message or a life lesson.
Question. Let me think about that for a few minutes. A good life lesson, I think, is to understand that everything they thought they knew about themselves and this beautiful planet we have the privilege of living on. Rethink it. Um, Take that walk in the woods. And if you happen to live in a city, if you're waiting for a bus, lean up against a tree. They will speak to you if you listen. I want them to take away how important not only are to each other and how connected we are, our stories, to look into their ancestral tales, their own person. I don't care where you are in the world. Really dig deep and look at these stories, not as it's told through story movies, but really look into their own ancestral history. We have this whole lovely thing where people are taking DNA tests to find out where they came from, their ancestors, but also look into their beliefs of how we got here, and also notice how we are interconnected. We are interconnected as a people. We're not really separate. We may come from different parts of this world, but we really are one. And nature will show that to you. And one thing I would want them to know is that if you follow their ancestral roots, they'll see that truth of how we are interconnected as a people. And I hope that expresses itself through my story, Secret of the Family Tree, because we are a family. We here on this planet are a family. And I want them to question. And this is what Samantha did. She just didn't take what people, even her own family, what they said is true. She went digging. She went digging for the truth. And because of her and her cousin, her family rediscovered the truth about not only her family, but the family of all humans on the planet. And I hope they take that message away, how interconnected we are, and to question everything about themselves and open their eyes to not only the humans around us, but to the tree that may be just hanging outside your window.
All right, thank you so much, Tori. So, here is my final question for you. Is the secret of the family tree the beginning of a larger journey? And what can readers look forward to next?
Yes, Secret of the Family Tree is the first in my Secret of the Family Tree series, Digging Up Old Roots, which is where they discover the truth. The next story of the Secret of the Family Tree series is The Many Branches. Again, the Fairland family, led by Samantha and her family, go deeper into the truths they discovered from the first book. And they go deeper into the secret societies across the earth that have chased her family, who have tried to keep these secrets buried for power. And they connect with other people around the world, learning of their journey and why they wanted to keep it secret. And after that series, there's the third in this series called The New Leaves, which I'm still working on. That's a working title, but I'm solid that that's going to be the name of the third book. And that journey is going to wrap up. I'm saying it's going to wrap up. As you know, as a storyteller, sometimes you get going, but this is supposed to be a trilogy. But after this first book, there will be the follow-up that's coming out this fall, where Samantha continues with her story. The whole Fairland family discovers more about the secrets that spread across the world, that goes into parts of Japan, Egypt, just branches out all over. And they're seeing how wide these secret societies and how they want to keep their secrets buried. They do not want the secret out to humanity at large.
All right, thank you so much, Tori. Thank you for sharing and taking us into the magical world of the secrets of the family tree, digging up old roots. The blend of folklore, family history, and mystery and imagination creates a story that reminds us how deeply our roots can shape who we become. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. So before you go, Tori,
Thank you
is
for
there a
having me.
question? Okay. So before you go, is there a question you wish I would have asked you that I did not ask?
Um, I would like to share with people who are thinking of writing their own stories. Just do it. It's so it brings writing. It took me a long time to write a novel. like I said, it started with just telling my children the stories of my mother's people. But there's so many stories hidden within us. And if you're thinking of becoming an author, I would encourage you just to write it because we all have a story within us that I feel is important to share, be it, for your own family or to be put out into the public, which I think would be a lovely thing to do. It's I feel that, there's so many new authors that are just sitting on the fence. And even being an indie author, I think is a wonderful time to be an indie author because you get the opportunity to tell your story the way you choose to tell it.
All right, so once again, thank you so much. So for those who would like to connect with you and get your book, know more about your work, how can they do that?
Sure. You can go to my website, which is torryrose.com. Of course, http://. It is Torry, TORRYROSE.com. You can connect with my story there. You can send me a message. I can tell you more about my next novel coming out there. I'm going to be sending out a newsletter. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to my website again. That's torryrose.com, TORRYROSE.com.
Okay, once again, thank you so much, Tori. It has been a pleasure. And thanks to all my listeners for taking out their time to be with us today. And you all do have a wonderful day ahead. Bye, Tori. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.